It is about time we finally have the discussion of who actually is the most influential rapper of all time. What it do, Crispy Crew? Um, I gotta redo that. What the hell? What it do, Crispy Crew? All right, that was better. That was better. I don't know. I feel like I have not been doing my intros as good as of recent, so we're trying to fix that. But no, if you haven't read the title of the video or watched the intro that I just played for you, we're going to be talking about the most influential rappers of all time. Now, for people who view my page at all, then you probably already have a general good understanding of the stuff that we talk about: anime, gaming, rap music, R&B, just anything basically. But I guess today we're focusing purely on the most influential rappers of all time. But in order to try to pinpoint who I would personally think is the most influential, I think we need to start from the beginning. All right, so it's about 1970, I believe. I don't remember the exact year or the decade, if I'm honest with you. I didn't do any research before recording this video. I just put my phone up to start recording. But generally, I think we can at least pinpoint to somewhere around the 1960s to 1970s. What you call it? Now, during this time period, it was around, I want to say, in 1960s, 1970s New York, the Bronx specifically. Either the Bronx or Brooklyn, y'all can decide who does that because people like to fight over who actually started it first. But let's be honest, it was the Bronx. But no, um, a lot of black folks in the Bronx, they wanted to make, to sum it all up, because this is just cutting out a lot of information. To sum it all up, a lot of black folks in the Bronx wanted to make music and wanted to express themselves freely within their communities for parties, but they didn't have the resources to do so. What they did have was record players and turntables and things of that nature, so they started getting creative. Now, it didn't even start off with rapping. It started off with people just remixing records. That's what hip hop started off as, is remixing records to get the party going. They used to do a lot of it with soul samples or soul people like James Brown, Teddy Pendergrass, and more of the like. The main issue with this, or at least the main issue that most old heads at the time had with this, is that they believed that it was unoriginal. Now, if we're being honest, this same issue still plays a part in old heads and today when it comes to sampling, but unfortunately, that's a conversation for a different day. Now, a lot of people during this time were very influential in terms of like the start and the founding, but a lot of people would probably say the first big wave of influence kind of started when NWA came on the scene, with specifics to Ice Cube and Eazy-E. And Dr. Dre. I can't forget Dr. Dre, even though he's kind of a fraud, but we're gonna have to get back to that at a different point. But what you call it? It was really with NWA. Now, I'm not gonna say what NWA means if you don't already know what it means with attitude. Um, I said I like how I said I wasn't gonna say what it means and then immediately say what it meant. But no, generally it was one of the most prolific rap groups at that time because there was places like Run DMC, a tribe called Quest, and things of that nature. But NWA really made the biggest wave in the subgenre of hip hop that most folks label as gangsta rap, or in some specific scenarios, G Funk. I like to throw them more under G Funk than gangsta rap because they use more elements of G Funk anyway. But once again, I'll have to be breaking down the different subgenres of hip hop in a later video. You're gonna be hearing me say that a lot. Um, but no, that was the first big wave. Now, what people don't seem to realize is that this is the wave of hip hop that ended up eventually influencing Tupac, which they say is the greatest rapper of all time, let alone the most influential. But I beg to differ on both of those, but we're just going to focus on the influence part. Now, Nobody can deny Tupac's greatness. He was a poet. He was a poet at heart, but he was also a really good actor. So he was able to convey different amounts of emotions through his music or through his lyricism, and that is something that nobody can deny. That's just a plain fact. What people can deny, though, is how much of it was actually authentic. Because, like I said before, he was an actor. If you look at previous interviews of Tupac, that man was he was very soft spoken and very down to earth. Then he got locked up once. Then his entire persona changed, where he became this gangster who, for whatever reason, was very misogynistic in certain specific interviews. Who, in previous interviews during his time, you would think he would be very against, like even just simple scenarios of just calling women bitches. Like those are specific examples of how Tupac has kind of changed the persona. But I believe it was intentional because, like I said before, he is an actor. I believe it was intentional to try to make his image seem better because people weren't calling him the greatest rapper of all time until he made that switch and until he died too. But still, the thing is with Tupac is that he was a monumental figure in hip hop. So when he died, and people blamed Suge Knight for it, even though it was probably Diddy, it started to create different types of discourse on type of what type of influence Tupac would bring in the next coming years. Then, then we seen what type of influence we brought. We started getting a lot more people trying to be gangsters in their hip hop, or trying to put on personas that they are actually about the street life, or that they're actually a thug, when in reality they are not. Um, Not saying Lil Wayne is not or is a thug. I don't really care that much to really put that pinpoint, but it segues into our most influential person that I would say of the 2000s and shit, maybe even the 2010s. But he didn't share this era by himself. Lil Wayne and another person I'm going to mention right now, Gucci Mane, are two rappers who I would like to call the mixtape era kings, for lack of better terms. While they have commercial success, or at least Lil Wayne had commercial success, most of their biggest hits for people that people know them for usually stems from their mixtapes. For at least for when it comes to Gucci Mane. Now there was other people who had influence during this time, but it didn't really hit the same as Gucci Mane or Lil Wayne, because people like 50 Cent came out, like Ja Rule, and New York was making crazy big scenes in hip hop like they always do. But for whatever reason, it just wasn't hitting the same as Lil Wayne and Gucci Mane. The same can be said for Kanye, but unfortunately, his influence won't be seen until a later time, so we'll have to put a pin on him. But no, Lil Wayne and Gucci Mane birthed an entire generation of rappers, not only in their own generation, but a generation after, and another one after that. For Lil Wayne at least, it was just a lot of folks just, it wasn't necessarily rappers trying to be like him, it was the general population. It was a lot of people who wanted to be Bloods for whatever fucking reason. I don't know why you would want to be a gang member, especially if you didn't really have to grow up in that life. Like, take me, for example. That's like me being like, oh, I didn't grow up having to be in the street life. Even though I grew up in the hood, I didn't grow up having to be like in the fucking life of that shit. Oh, let me just go ahead and bang GD right quick. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, that does not make sense. So that's kind of where that issue kind of started to lie. But then eventually, Gucci Mane's kind of birthed a whole new wave of mixtape rappers who started doing their own thing, who didn't try to rap for the industry. And that's one thing that I wanted to give Gucci Mane his flowers for, because he always, and I mean always, just did things his way. I remember there was an interview at that time, not for him. Well, he did an interview after this one that I was talking about, and I'm going to say what his response was. But somebody, I forgot who it was, but it was some like blogger slash DJ, somebody who said trap is not hip hop, because that's what they labeled Gucci Mane as trap. And then he responded, if I'm not hip hop, then I guess I'm trap. He always did things his way. He didn't do things for the commercial industry approval. And that's what hip hop has always been. It was never supposed to turn into this industry mogul that we see hip hop as. And honestly, that goes into the next burst of influence of why I have to mention this. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to talk about Diddy. Now, while Diddy might not have made too much influence on his actual musical appeal, because that nigga sucked, like that nigga actually sucks ass. I don't know why anyone would say that Diddy is actually a good rapper, because he's not. Puff sucks. Let's just get that out the way. Puff is not a good rapper. But one thing that people seem to forget is that he unintentionally influenced the way people sample songs in hip hop. Sampling it has gotten so much lazier because of him. If I'm being honest, any issue that you have in hip hop right now in terms of like the misogyny or the way people treat others or the exploitation of other artists or how every rapper wants to be like a mob boss, most of those problems can be traced back to Puff. And the reason why Puff is such a huge issue with me, at least, is because he's influencing the wrong things. Like, if you're going to influence a positive way, then yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, he's already bad for the stuff that he's dealing with in his trial. But unfortunately, we're just focusing on the music right now. Like, on the musical standpoint, that nigga sucked. So I'm really trying to understand why he was getting so much recognition as just this person who's just going to influence everybody else to do this or to do that in their music videos. It started becoming more about braggadocious lifestyle instead of about actual self-expression. Diddy, just like Tupac and a couple other people that we'll be mentioning here, was an actor. But circling back down to like 2007, Kanye West is making Graduation. And right after that, he's going to make an album that a lot of people are going to consider his most controversial, but also his most influential. Some may say that Yeezus might be a more influential project, but if you ask me personally, I'm going to say that 808s and Heartbreak was Kanye's most influential thing that he has ever done in his entire career. Which, if you want to be honest, was technically influenced by someone who's not even a rapper. Well, he is, but not anymore, I guess. Um, this is little man we know, not little man. He's actually a pretty big name. This is guy we know as T Pain. Now, if you know me personally, you know I have T Pain as my top five greatest artists ever, no matter the genre. He's just that good. Well, I would have to reevaluate, but still, he's at the very minimum top 10. Like, he's crazy. But one thing that T-Pain has influenced not only with hip hop, but with every genre ever has been autotune. Beforehand, niggas didn't use autotune the way that T-Pain did, but T-Pain changed the way autotune was used forever until this day. And it directly influenced how Kanye did 808s and Heartbreak. All Kanye did was, I wouldn't say he stole, but he kind of stole melodies from previous T-Pain albums and placed them in 808s and Heartbreak while still putting his own flair because Kanye is still a genius producer. That is something that we have to acknowledge. I'm talking about pure music here. That is something we have to acknowledge. So, with that moving along, let me make sure this is still recording. Okay, it is. With that moving along, it created a wave of influence of other rappers in an entirely different subgenre of hip hop. That's where you get the Travis Scotts, in some aspects, Lil Uzi Verts. And when people, as so much as people like to deny it, Drake is a direct influence of Kanye West. But once again, we'll get back to that at separate times. And all of those artists that I have mentioned have been influential in one way or another, if I'm being honest with you. But with the one artist that Kanye unintentionally influenced was Playboy Cardi, but it was in more of like a fashion standpoint, I would say. And even then, that's very minimal because right afterwards, he was influenced by the next big mogul that was a direct influence of Lil Wayne, Young Thug. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I think it's pretty safe to say that Young Thug and the next person I'm going to mention after him are the two most influential people when it comes to just the hip hop sphere in general. Young Thug influenced the entire Atlanta rap scene. If you want to give it to Future, and I can understand why you would say that, but I give it to Thug more because of what he did with his mixtapes. When Gucci Mane and Lil Wayne's mixtape era was dying, Young Thug, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and basically any other blog rapper, their mixtape era skyrocketed. And it was because of this that people started to know Young Thug so much that a lot of people didn't even care about mainstream artists at the time. And Young Thug connected to people unintentionally through just like a melodic standpoint, bro. Like Young Thug was actually crazy, and that's what people don't give him enough credit for. Is that his influence was mostly unintentional, and that's for a lot of these artists. Um, a lot of these artists' influence is unintentional. Same thing with Lil B. Now, Lil B, also known as the Bass God, influenced niggas he didn't even think he was going to be influencing. Um, Lil B somehow influenced random white kids to start saying based, not knowing what the fuck that shit actually means. And if you want to know what that shit actually means, you can look that up because if you're a white person watching this, I want you to do the hard work to find out. Is that sketchy? Well, not sketchy. Is that bogus? I would say so. Do I care? Not at all. Um, but yeah, you would have to do the hard work to go find that out. But I'm pretty sure he's explained it at least a couple times in his songs, let alone in actual other interviews or YouTube videos. And that's another thing I wanted to influence or say that he influenced. Lil B influenced the way the underground scene changed forever. He influenced not only the way that we actually consume and listen to the music, but also the way the artists even make the music and make images around it. Everything was done through the internet with Lil B. He even had cosigns from Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole and any other blog era rapper. He was the blog era, just not from mainstream appeal. Mainstream did not mess with Lil B because he actually did what he wanted. And I think that was the main issue here, is that Lil B doesn't get his flowers because he didn't get the mainstream appeal. And I think that's the main issue for why people don't give him his flowers and how much influence he actually has. Because people say, oh yeah, he's influential. No, I think Lil B is the most influential rapper of all time. Because without him, we don't get Soldier Boy, who already influenced a whole list of niggas. But without him, we don't get Soldier Boy. We don't get Playboy Cardi. We don't get Lil Uzi. We don't get the 2016 freshman class, with the exception of maybe G Herbo, because that man, I don't think he was influenced, but he came from the same era as the final person I want to talk about here, Chief Keef. Chief Keef, if you're gonna ask me, is I want to say number 3 on the list. Like if I had to make a list of my most influential rappers that I personally think are influencing hip hop the most, it would be Lil B, Young Thug, and Chief Keef. Now, whatever you want to say about what they do in their free time is one thing, but if we talk about the music, Chief Keef changed everything. But not only just in the music, but from the fashion standpoint. He had white boys dressing in polos and khakis with fucking Jordan 4s, bro. That nigga was insane. Like he was actually crazy. So it's one of those things where it's like you can tell that he was just living his life and people loved him for it because he was being authentic. And that's the thing I want to conclude on. If you want to be influential in anything, let alone hip hop, you actually have to be you. And if for some reason you're not you and you're still influencing people, it's because you somehow convinced them that that's actually you. So it's either you be a really good actor or you be yourself. But most of the time, you just need to be yourself. And that's one of the things that I kind of want to even like comment on is that it's kind of insane how being yourself is becoming this it's becoming this like really weird thing that nobody wants to do. And I don't know why it is falling out of scarcity or that it's getting into a scarcity level of people just being themselves because it's not hard to do. It isn't. Like, have you just tried just existing with your own thoughts? It's not hard actually. It is. I'm lying. It is if you don't do it often. It's a skill like everything else. But no, I wanted to conclude that on the point of I believe that the reason why these people were so influential is because they touched people's hearts in a way that made people realize that, oh, I don't need to put on an act to do what I want to do in life. I can just go do it. And that's how we got some of the best music that we've ever listened to in about 2 decades. I personally think that the best era of hip hop was the 2010s, not necessarily because, oh, we had the best quality of music, because there was something for everybody. If you wanted the mainstream shit that got you the hits and get you the club joking, you had that. But if you wanted more influential and like standout tracks that hit home to you, you could still get that. All because of these different influences in hip hop. And if I'm being honest, I'm only scratching the iceberg. There's so many people that I haven't talked about in the underground scene that have influenced hip hop. Even in the mainstream level, like niggas like Kendrick and Cole influenced generations unintentionally. Because at least a generation in hip hop is different than a generation in real life, but that's another story for a different day. But no, if you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. The video game soundtrack video is taking a bit longer than I was originally expecting, so you're just gonna have to be a little bit patient for that. So that's why I recorded this one, so I can still get that one out the way. And by the time you're watching this, 9 times out of 10, there's most likely a chance that I'll probably be getting ready to slide the DreamCon. But for the folks who know me personally, you already knew that. But for the folks who do know me personally and didn't know that, well, then here's your announcement. I don't really know what else to tell you. I'm gonna be heading to DreamCon, so if for whatever reason I see any of y'all there, I'm gonna dab you up. And if some reason I see a subscriber there, I'm definitely gonna dab you up because I appreciate every 285 of y'all. Thank you. Y'all have a good one.